G'day mates, in today's video we're going to talk about the huge Storm Surge changes Epic just made, and no, these aren't the ones I talked about a few days ago. These haven't been reverted, they are here to stay, and I want to talk about whether it's good for the game, why Epic did it, and whether the pros like it, because some pros absolutely love it, some pros absolutely hate it. I also want to recap today's Cash Cup because it was the first time we saw these Storm Surge changes, which teams adapted and did well and which are going to struggle coming into FNCS, and then I want to explain the FNCS format quickly because a lot of teams are really confused about what's going on with semifinals, how it works, and also about the huge break we have between semifinals and grand finals. We are going to have no tournaments in game for 2 weeks. There's a lot to talk about. Let's just jump into it. Now, I know what you're thinking. You probably think there's a video you've already seen because I'm talking about changes to Storm Surge, but no, this is not the video I made a few days ago. Epic made some changes to Storm Surge. They reverted them, and now they've added them back, but slightly different. And I want to talk about how they're affecting the game because they did not revert these. These ran today for all the Cash Cup finals, including NA East and EU. I watched all the games, and I want to give my opinion and some of the opinions of the pros, whether they think it's good for the game and exactly how it played out. So let's start off with the original tweet. So Fortnite Competitive tweeted out, Storm Surge values have changed in Duo's competitive playlist, previous to new. So obviously on the left, you have what it used to be. So at third zone, it was 70. Now it's 64. Instead of 70, it's 54 at fourth zone, which never used to actually have Surge because once it went below 70, obviously it just stopped. Now it's got 64, 54. At 50, it goes to 44, 50 to 40, and 30 to 30. Now, let me sum up what that actually means for you before you freak out and get too confused. Basically, starting at third zone now, where previously you had to get below 70 players alive, it is now 64 players, but basically in stacked lobbies, there is either a Surge warning or active Surge pretty much until the game ends. In all the Cash Cup finals today, there was pretty much Surge for all of these new thresholds at every point. So it means teams have to be way more aggressive, they have to get way more active, and they have to constantly be doing damage, especially teams that are dropping on the edge of the map. So I'll talk about exactly how it played out in a second. Fortnite Competitive went on to say the Fortnite Competitive's team goal with these Storm Surge adjustments is to provide a short-term effort to improve server performance in our high-end single lobby tournaments by enforcing aggression amongst competitors. So whatever people are saying about they wanted to make people fight more in mid-game because it's more entertaining for the broadcast, they've said here that the reason they've done this is because the servers cannot handle having too many players alive, and this is a short-term solution. They then went on to say we will continue to identify additional long-term paths not related to Storm Surge to improve server performance, while also monitoring and making more adjustments to Storm Surge if necessary to all competitive playlists. They give you feedback and understanding. So let's sum up what that means. Firstly, very good communication by Epic. That is some of the best communication we've ever had. Normally we get the first tweet saying what's changed. They don't tell us why they changed it. So I want to commend Epic on that because I would love to see that trend continue, knowing why they're doing things. Because you could argue that it was to make mid-game more exciting for the broadcast. That's not a bad argument, but we've been specifically told by Epic it's because the servers are so laggy, and they've had to admit they have no other way to fix it other than putting on stronger Storm Surge. We've gotten rid of cars, gotten rid of fire, we've gotten rid of shockwaves, gotten rid of so many things, and the game was still unplayable. So this is their band-aid fix. Does this mean these changes are going to be reverted? Maybe. If Epic can fix something with the servers, it is a potential we'll go back to the old Storm Surge. But I want to talk about whether they should keep the new Storm Surge. There's been very mixed responses from pros. I have a whole bunch of pros opinions here. You have Kanata saying it's goated. You have Rezon saying he hates it. You have Pink saying it's amazing. There's quite a difference in opinions right now. Like anything when the game changes massively. Also, you got to remember certain teams that did better today in the Cash Cups or have drop spots or playstyles more suited to these changes obviously adapted to it better and enjoyed it more than other teams. So what effect did it have on the game? Firstly, games were less stacked. Obviously, because there are less people, because Storm Surge is killing them, so there's going to be less players. But were the servers better? Yes, by a lot. The servers were so much better today, it's insane. Like, they don't even look like the same servers from this season. I have been watching almost every single competitive game this season for EU and NA, and almost every single one of them at certain points was an absolute joke. Just people dying through walls, teleporting through walls. I've showed the clips multiple times in videos. You've seen them. So did this fix the actual problem? Yes, this was a solution to the lag. And I would have to argue that yes, I love stacked games as much as you guys do, but having super laggy servers where a player dies in endgame when they get shot through a completely built wall and there was nothing they could do to stop it, compared to adding a new mechanism that players can at least learn and adapt to, is a far better solution. Now, obviously, I would not like this solution to come out mid FNCS. Ideally, this kind of change would happen after an FNCS, but as we've all been asking for constantly, we need the servers to be fixed. And yes, I would love to live in a perfect world where Epic can just flick the switch for the better servers and all of a sudden everything's fixed, but this looks like the only solution Epic has right now, and I would rather take it. It is the lesser of two evils. Again, some pros going so far as to say this is amazing for the game. As far as me watching the games today, I did a viewing party for them on stream. They were far more enjoyable. From someone who is a spectator, I am not a player, but I do care about the thoughts of players, because if the players quit the game and don't play, we have no one to watch. I thought it was really enjoyable. The mid-game fights were super entertaining. They were super engaging. It wasn't like a whole bunch of random started popping off and placing. We had the same big names doing consistently really well. Just look at the EU Cash Cup leaderboard. It's all the top names you would expect. It came down to a super exciting, really close finish between Kami and Seti and Pink and Anas. We had Taste in the top of that leaderboard for a while, and these teams did this by taking consistent fights, winning them, battling their way through mid-game, and then playing the end games. Yes, the end games were a little bit less stacked, but how exciting the mid-game was to watch, which is normally a lot more boring, was really fun. And I would argue their ability to adapt to this new skill is something that should be rewarded. I know a lot of casuals seem to always say, just adapt. And I normally hate that, like the mechs, right? Oh bro, just adapt, to like getting rocketed in the face. Storm Surge is a little bit different. Every single team is facing the same Storm Surge, but on the flip side, I will admit teams that are dropping Edge Map are at a much more disadvantage right now, especially on NA East when the first 3 zones pulled really far south. Teams that were dropping far north were just, they were an absolute world of hurt. They're trying to do a ridiculous amount of damage. A whole bunch of teams didn't know how to get Surge now that their Surge is higher, so they're just running at people in zone, they're holding them. It also has buffed Grapple Glove. Being able to get your Surge and then quickly rotate, especially endgame, has made its strength go even higher. Again, a lot of the teams that did really well today don't have Grapple Glove, but it has been a very helpful tool with these changes around people fighting. You can also disengage from fights, but if you like the old metas, if you liked World Cup, you like watching the skirmish days or some of the older competitive, it feels a lot more like that. The pacing of the game has shifted. It is a lot more aggressive, and teams who can take their fights and win them are doing really well. Teams that are trying to base up early for their Surge and not take too many fights, I noticed Cold and Centered were doing this on NA East, weren't doing anywhere near as well as other teams who are playing a lot more aggressive in that mid game. Cold and Centered still did really well out of the mid map, because obviously that's a great drop with this. They have the splashes, everything like that, but ultimately teams that were taking those aggressive fights and winning them were rewarded, and I think that's an awesome skill to have. So whatever your opinions are, let me know in the comments down below. Do you love it or do you hate it? I have to admit that it's a better solution than watching the game at its current state as of like a week ago. It just was getting almost unwatchable. The servers were breaking so bad. So at least we achieved that solution, but we'll see maybe in the future if Epic can fix the servers, because we've had good servers in the past without this aggressive Storm Surge. We've had 50-man rotatings and the game has felt and looked much better. Maybe if Epic can make those changes, I don't know whether it takes improving servers or whether they actually have to go into the game itself and work on the code. I'm not a software engineer. Maybe we can go back to the old Surge, but right now there are quite a few people who really like it. Let's take a look at the leaderboards. I just touched on them a little bit there, but we had on EU, Seti and Kami coming out in first place on 190 points. Really consistent Fortnite from them, only having one bad game going down in 40th, but other than that, a 8 Elim 3rd, 3 Elim 6th, 5 Elim win, 6 Elim 4th, and 3 Elim 3rd. So Seti and Kami adapting to the new changes really well, but they only just beat out Pink and Anas, who had 6 matches, no win, and again, only had one throwaway game, a 2 Elim 44th. Outside of that, got a 3 Elim 14th, a 9 Elim 2nd, 5 Elim 2nd, 5 Elim 6th, and 6 Elim 4th. And then in third place, Tasten and Chapix on 145 points, 6 matches, 1 win. They were doing really well until unfortunately their last game being their worst. But again, those are 3 of the best 5 teams on EU, at least in my opinion, and they came first, second, and third. It's pretty hard to argue these changes are terrible for the game and the best pros aren't placing. They still are. These guys have adapted, and again, I will touch on the the fact that Taste and Chapix have a really good center map drop that helps them a lot. Seti Kami on the Kami split is also somewhat center, but Pink and Anast out of Joneses is not a fantastic drop for these new changes. They had to take some really aggressive fights and they played really, really well. Moving over to NA East, in first place we had Nico and Casca again, only just beating out a team by 3 points, beating out Jampa and Iomzo. Now Nico and Casca are dropping Synapse Station. That is a what I would consider really edge map drop, but I will give credit to the fact that, like I said, the first 3 zones all pulled really far south, and I think, honestly, I think the 5th zone did as well. So they did have really good zones for their drop, and they also have rifts to get a lot more central. But again, as an edge map drop that still worked even with the changes. Jampa and Iomzo are coming out of Rave Cave. Rave Cave, again, is a very strong drop in general, especially with launch pads to get around the map. So I won't call that too much of an edge map drop. And then Cold and Scented coming in 3rd out of mid map. Just like I spoke about with Taste and Chapix, a very, very good drop for the changes. So I'm not going to try to pretend the drops don't matter. They do, and that's why this kind of change mid FNCS is a little bit rough, but a lot of the top teams are still doing really well. Then you've got Mason and NPen in 4th on 163. Again, they're dropping kind of like more south on the map. And then Dukes and Clicks in 5th on 156, doing it out of Joneses, just like Pink and Anast. So there are teams that are making it with less than favorable drops for the conditions. Last up, I wanted to explain what's going on with FNCS because people are really confused. Starting tomorrow is semifinals, at least in the major regions. I'll be doing viewing parties for EU and NA East as always, but people confused on how this works. So we've already taken our top 15 teams, top 5 from each of the final qualifiers. They've gone straight through, and now we have semifinals. Again, it's the same format as last season, but I'll explain it because it's really, really simple. All of the teams have been getting series points or consistency points throughout playing the tournaments, so that even if you came, like, let's say 6th, you didn't make it to grands, but you got really good series points, you are now playing in semifinals. Session 1, which is going to be 5 games, is the top 50 teams on the series leaderboard. I'm going to put a link to Kinch's website down below, which has all this. Just go to the region you care about, and you'll see that the top teams are already in grands. The rest, you just go 1 to 50. They're playing in Heat 1. The way each heat is going to work is anyone who gets a victory royale is going to go straight through to grands, and anyone who comes top 6. So in Session 1, that's 5 games. You're going to have 5 teams go straight through for wins, and top 6. That's 11. Then obviously you've taken 11 teams out. You need to fill them somehow. Heat 2 is going to start with the top 50 players who just played in the first semifinals that didn't make it through, and then adding the next 11 most consistent teams on the leaderboards. That's going to be up until 61st on the series leaderboard. They're going to play 6 matches, 6 wins, top 6 go through. That's 12. You need now to add another 12 teams. Then you're going to have the 62nd to 73rd most consistent teams. That's Heat 3. So that's how heats and semifinals are going to work. They are 3 days. They're not on the same time, which is amazing. So 3 separate days. I will be doing viewing parties for them, like I said, if you want to come and watch all the action. And then that will be our top 50 teams in grand finals. Keep in mind though, there is a very large break between semifinals and grand finals. I've talked about this a little bit, but it is because Epic is actually going on break for 2 weeks, and we are also going to have no tournaments in that 2 weeks. It's going to be a little bit rough, but again, Epic's going to take a break at some time. I really wish FNCS was after it, before it, later, earlier. Just, we're in one of the longest seasons ever. There should have been time to fit in an FNCS without having this break in the middle. But if we're going to have a break at any time, I guess between semis and grands to kind of get some scrims going, get some practice, maybe give time for these teams to learn this new surge mechanic, it's not the end of the world, but it's obviously not ideal. All right, guys, that does it for another video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please chuck a like on it, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.